Cube stereo hybrids are the eMTB of choice of more and more fly rides customers, it seems like every day. In fact, in a recent eMTB magazine poll, Cube beat out Specialized when eMTB magazine asked European riders which brand they would buy next. We have found in the cycling industry that as goes Europe, so goes the US eventually, so you would do yourself a favor to know Cube and know them well. So today we are going to take a look at two of Cube's most popular series of bikes, the Stereo Hybrid 140 and the Stereo Hybrid 160. Now we already have quite a few reviews of Cube eMTBs and the 2021 lineup specifically, so if you are doing research on Cube electric bikes, I would highly recommend subscribing to this channel right now because we're gonna just have more and more and you don't wanna miss any of it. But if you're looking for a more general breakdown on the Cube Stereo Hybrid series, let's get into it right now. Now you might be sitting there thinking to yourself, the difference between Stereo Hybrid 140s and 160s? Easy, it's the travel. 140 millimeters of travel on the Stereo Hybrid 140s and 160 millimeters of travel on the 160s. Case closed. But hold your horses there, private eye. It's a little more nuanced than that. So let's open that case back up and dig in. Now let's talk about these bikes in terms of just generalities. So the Cube Stereo Hybrid 140 series is going to be the less aggressive ride. It has less travel. Generally speaking, on most of those bikes, it's 150 millimeters of travel in the front and 140 in the back. This is going to be great for all mountain, cross-country riding. If you're just getting into eMTB riding, this is probably the correct series for you. The Cube Stereo Hybrid 160 series of bikes is going to allow for enduro riding, some greater downhill speeds, and overall just a more aggressive ride. On those 160s, most of them are going to have 170 millimeters of travel up front and 160 in the rear. If you're looking to do fire roads, single track, some downhill sections that are going to take you between 20 to 30 miles per hour, and maybe a few jumps here and there, then the Cube Stereo Hybrid 140 series is going to be plenty for you. But if you're looking for an eMTB to take you off drops greater than 5 feet, speeds above 30 miles per hour, or take on some really rocky enduro rides, then the 160 is probably going to be more for you. And of course, there is going to be a bit of crossover between these two series, the 140 and the 160. I don't want you to think just because I didn't mention single track with the 160 that it can't do single track. It absolutely can. Same as on the 140 series, yes, you can go over 30 miles per hour. It's not like the wheels are gonna fall off that thing at that speed. These are just generalities for the type of rider that you might be. There's a chance this might answer all the questions you might have had on it. If so, thank you, have a nice day. Check out one of the reviews of the Cube Stereo Hybrid bikes, but if not, let's talk a little bit deeper about geometries. So the main things we want to focus on within the geometry are the seat tube angles, the head tube angles, and the chainstay length. The Cube Stereo Hybrid 160 series is going to come with a 75.5 degree seat tube angle, a 65 degree head tube angle, and a 441.5 millimeter chainstay length. Now, if you're looking at me right now and saying, okay, cool, those numbers are great, but what do they mean? Let's talk about it right now. A seat tube angle in the mid-70s is going to be great for a bike like this. So again, these bikes are going to offer 75.5 degree seat tube angles. That is going to keep you more above the bottom bracket, and it's going to be an ideal position for climbing up hills and pedaling more efficiently, which is very important on enduro bikes because they're not necessarily known for their efficient uphill climbing and pedaling. So you really want this seat tube angle in an ideal position, which these Cube 160s do offer. The head tube angle of 65 degrees is pretty standard for enduro electric mountain bikes. Usually acoustic enduro bikes are going to offer slacker head tube angles, usually in the lower 60s, but we have found for enduro electric mountain bikes, the standard is pretty much 64 to about the mid 65 range, so 65.5, right around in there. A more slack head tube angle is going to allow for greater stability and faster downhill speeds, which is what you would want on an enduro bike. The drawback on this in comparison to an all-mountain or cross-country bike is that the handling is usually not quite as responsive on an enduro bike. But generally speaking, you're not really doing a ton of handling if you're going downhill at 40 miles per hour, right? Or if you are, you might run into some trouble. So it's usually a downhill, straight line speed situation that you're looking for. Now, the chainstay length on this bike at 441.5 millimeters is pretty short for an electric enduro bike. What this is going to allow for is better cornering. So this isn't something you necessarily think of when you're thinking of enduro bikes, but it's also why the 160 series is so versatile. So they have this shorter chainstay length in the back, which helps for getting you off the ground if you are wanting to do bigger jumps. And also, again, cornering downhill and handling uphill is going to be a lot easier because of that short chainstay length. The Cube Stereo Hybrid 140 series comes with a 74.8 degree seat tube angle, a 65.6 degree head tube angle, and 457 millimeter chainstays. Hey guys, you may have noticed that the numbers on screen right now are not what I just said, and that is because Cube has just updated this on their website, so I am too. Currently, those numbers are listed at 75.2 degrees for the seat tube angle, 66 degrees for the head tube angle, and 457 for the chainstay. That stayed the same. Again, you've got that seat tube angle in the mid-70s, which is excellent for when you're pedaling up hills. It's a less aggressive head tube angle, which is more appropriate for cross-country all-mountain riding, but it does improve that handling, which you would want in those styles of riding. And those longer chainstays are going to help with that climb and also keep that rubber to the dirt. Quick note, the geometries we talked about there are the geometries for the small through extra large sizes. There is an extra small frame size this year. The geometries are this. But the same principles apply. Another thing you might want to consider when deciding between the Stereo Hybrid 160s and the Stereo Hybrid 140s is what wheel size you like. Now, quick disclaimer here, do not think of wheel sizes in terms of sizing on the bike. Wheel size does not really have anything to do with bike size overall, so do not think, oh, I want the one with the smaller wheel size because I'm a smaller person. That is not how wheel sizes work. There are different reasons for different wheel sizes, but sizing is not really one of them. Instead, what we're talking about is whether or not you have a preference between 29-inch wheels and 27.5-inch wheels. Now, if you don't have a personal preference, the good news is that the 160 and the 140 are both set up with wheel sizes that make sense for the type of bike they are. The Stereo Hybrid 140 series is going to come with a 29-inch wheel set that is good for rolling over roots and rocks that you might encounter on a single track section. The 29er wheel set is also going to help you gain and maintain speed, which is nice because remember, those cross-country, all-mountain style bikes aren't super aggressive, so they're not necessarily designed for fast downhill speeds. This 29er wheel set is going to help with that. The Stereo Hybrid 160 is going to come with 27.5-inch wheels, which is great for enduro bikes. It's going to help you navigate those big rocky sections. 27.5-inch wheels are great for electric enduro mountain bikes. So for most people, wheel size is not going to be the main determining factor between whether they go for a 140 or a 160, but the reason I'm highlighting it is that it does show that Cube has a very good idea of what each bike is good for. Again, that 140 with that 29er wheel set is definitely more appropriate for that XC all-mountain style, and the 160 with that 27.5-inch wheel set is more appropriate for enduro electric riding. So how do you know whether you should get a 140 or a 160? The first step, honestly, is just being honest with yourself. If you're out there just to do some fire roads, a little bit of single track, and not really hit any jumps or anything, you don't need the 160. Straight up, just get the 140, you'll be a lot happier, and honestly, it's a better ride for that type of riding. Basically, you want to ask yourself, are you an Austin or are you a Scott? Maybe we should actually do one of those like Cosmopolitan style quizzes where it's like Sex in the City except with bikes. Like, are you a Samantha or are you a, I don't remember the other people's names. If there's crossover of Sex in the City and this channel, let me know in the comments below because I would be shocked. Here's a little side note / tip for you guys. If the results of your Cosmopolitan quiz say that you're a Hector, go with the 160 because that's the bike that Hector actually rides, the Cube Stereo Hybrid 160. The good news is that both the Stereo Hybrid 140 and the Stereo Hybrid 160 offer a Bosch Performance CX motor with 85 Nm of torque, integrated battery, incredible design from Cube, high-end components, and there is a wide variety of bikes in both series so that you can find something suited for you no matter how much you want to spend and what your riding level is. I really can't stress this last point enough. Part of what makes Cube such a unique and smart brand is that they have 160 bikes and 140 bikes with basically the same specs. What I mean by this, if we take one of the high-end bikes from the 160 and the 140 series, the Action Team, if you look at the Stereo Hybrid 160 Action Team versus the Cube Stereo Hybrid 140 Action Team, they are basically spec'd out exactly the same. That means whether you're an enduro rider or a cross-country rider, you can still get a bike that's spec'd out with some of the best stuff on the market. Looking specifically at that Action Team, you look at the specs, they are about the same. The only difference is that on the 160, you're getting a Fox 38 float factory fork, whereas on the 140, you're getting a 36mm stanchion version of that. But even that, there's a reason for it. The reason you would get a 36 on the 140 as opposed to the 38 on the 160 is that you don't need quite as much absorbing power on a 140 as you would on a 160. So that 36 Fox factory fork is actually more appropriate for the 140, and the 38mm stanchion version is more appropriate for that 160. So even when there are differences in the specs between the 160 and the 140, there are reasons for it. What a lot of companies tend to do is only put the best of the best stuff on their high-end enduro and downhill bikes. This results a lot of times in riders getting enduro bikes when they're really more of an all-mountain rider. This really doesn't create an ideal situation because you might have someone on a bike that they're not going to be comfortable on long-term, or they're just not going to use it the way it's intended to be used. By having what essentially amounts to matching bikes in the 160 series and the 140 series, Cube makes sure that riders are taken care of whether you are an enduro downhill ripper or more of a cross-country all-mountain rider. Overall, you really cannot go wrong whether you're getting a stereo hybrid 160 or a stereo hybrid 140. Just don't forget my advice to know what type of riding you are going to do and be honest with yourself about it. Use this video to help inform your decision, join a community on Facebook, ask people what their experiences are with these bikes, and comment below. We would be happy to guide your decision between the 160 and the 140. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the Fly Rides Electric Bike channel so that you can stay up to date on Cube eMTBs and eMTBs in general. Go check out our 2021 Cube Stereo Hybrid 160 Action Team review so that you can see what the best of the best looks like. And if you want a more general overview of the Cube bikes this year, check out our Cube video that we did a little while back detailing the lineup. Thanks so much for watching, you guys, and until next time, enjoy the ride.